firstly, apologies. As you can see, I'm not Kath O'Neill. She's gone down with this gastro flu bug and apologises that she's not here and able to attend tonight. And Kath was actually the founder of the company and the technology. So my name is Doug Quinn. I'm CFO of SkinBioTherapeutics. We're a spin-out from Manchester University and operating in the microbiome space. So some background to those of you that aren't familiar with the microbiome. So the human body has as much bacteria on and within it as we have human cells. And the collective name for all the genes that reside within that bacteria is the microbiome. And as a kind of sense of scale, so we've got around 23,000 genes within us. Well, the microbiome on our body has over 1 million. So that the difference is huge, and I think people are now beginning to recognise, certainly from a science point of view, the impact that the microbiome can have on how the body operates and functions, both positively and negatively, actually. So probiotics, this is probably the most familiar aspect of the microbiome. You'll have come across probiotics in terms of the yogurts and drinks that you see advertised. And generally, they're extracts of bacteria from the gut, and through the yogurts and the drinks, you're effectively taking good bacteria and putting it back inside your stomach to regulate and help manage your gut. So there's been a lot of work in the area of probiotics and the gut, and we know the way in which probiotics work. I mean, they serve a number of functions. Firstly, they help to prevent nasty pathogens from invading into the gut. They perform an important role in terms of protecting the gut barrier through a mechanism called tight junctions, which I'll come on to talk a little bit about later. And the third area is they help to heal wounds within the gut. Now, naturally, you don't think that your gut becomes wounded, but actually, if, for example, you like a hot curry, then the capsaicin within a curry actually causes tiny lacerations within your gut, and the probiotics work to kind of help seal and recover your skin. And it's certainly a top tip if you are travelling overseas to different destinations. One of Kath's top tips is to make sure you do dose up on probiotics, because it really does help to protect your stomach and give you kind of protection whilst you're away. So all of these benefits are very applicable to the skin. So if you think of our skin, it's our natural boundary and barrier to the rest of the world. It's important that pathogens don't get within our body. It's also important that things like moisture are retained within inside our body. And the third area, clearly we know our skin gets damaged and needs to be repaired. And I guess that was the starting premise for Kath and her team at Manchester University, was then to say, well, rather than ingesting probiotics, could you apply them topically, put them onto the skin, and would you benefit from the same advantages? The other premise that they started with is that they wanted to work with dead bacteria rather than live. And two practical reasons for that. One, concern around safety. If you've got broken skin, what does it mean if you put bacteria onto it? And the secondly is from a formulation point of view. If you think about developing a gel or a cream, you don't want to be reliant on having to prove over a long period of time that the level of activity of probiotics and how long they extend for. So their working basis was to work with a lysate, which is basically an explosion of the bacteria into a dead material, and to see whether that could generate the same benefits. So we're targeting 3 market areas. Firstly, the skincare market, obviously a huge market potential. And this time of year, a lot of people will complain about having sensitive skin. A lot of that's caused by the dry air and the cold. And that's partly around water retention within the skin. And we know the work that we've done with our technology, SkinBioTix, it helps to improve the barrier of the skin, retain moisture within it, and therefore we're targeting a treatment for maintaining the look and the feel of skin to retain moisture. So that's our target for the skincare market. Our second area is around the prevention of infections. So you will have all heard of and seen in the press the issues around hospitals trying to prevent infections, and particularly MRSA. Well, the SA within MRSA is something called Staphylococcus aureus, which is the most prevalent pathogen that exists. It's very common, causes a lot of infection. And again, the work that we've done with the technology SkinBioTix is we know that that stops Staph aureus adhering to the skin. So it goes a long way then to being able to prevent infection passing around. And our third area is looking at eczema, obviously a kind of really nasty condition that now impacts close to a fifth of the paediatric population in the Western world. And we know from the research that eczema is something that waxes and wanes, and when people have a flare-up, there's two elements to do with that. One, their skin is broken, and secondly, there is the presence of Staph aureus on the skin. So again, when you think about a treatment from the SkinBioTix technology, we know that it helps to improve the barrier of the skin, which is one aspect, and secondly, we know that it stops the Staph aureus adhering to the skin. So this is quite early stage for us, but we know potentially there are the indications there that we could have a solution or a treatment that would be an adjunct to the existing treatments for eczema. So they're the three target areas that we're proceeding with our technology at the moment. So talking a little bit more around the technology. So I mentioned earlier around the tight junction. Basically, this is the junction at which the cells combine together, and you can see just up there, you want as tight a junction as possible. And for that to happen, you need an expression of a particular type of protein called claudin 4. And again, we know from the base work that we've done with our technology, that is very good at increasing the expression of claudin 4. And you can see on the two images here, so this is some skin that's been treated with SkinBioTix, and you can see by the brightness of the green that that's the expression of the claudin 4, and it's much greater than on a piece of skin that hasn't been treated. And this is, our testing is on human skin, so which is obviously the best example without it being on a live body. So we take extracts from plastic surgery, we can retain that skin and grow it up over a period of time. So we know that we're testing it on human skin. So that ability to protect or strengthen the tight junctions and protect the barrier, that's important for the cosmetic application where we want to retain moisture within the skin. One of the key tests that we need to go through before being able to take a cosmetic to market is around cytotoxicity. So we've done a lot of work within the lab and we're comfortable that it wasn't toxic, but we then obviously needed to engage a third party to get arm's length proof of that. So we engaged with Charles River. They ran the test and comfortably proved there was no cytotox after 24 hours. And then we've done two further tests. The first is phototoxicity. So our creams and gels will be applied to the skin. So we then need to know that when it's subjected to sunlight, that it doesn't cause any toxicity. And the third one is in terms of ocular. So people will work with creams and gels and then occasionally put their hands close to their eye. And again, we need to be sure that if cream gets inside people's eyes, that it's not toxic. And again, that test was passed. So we know that those are the key steps that we need to check from a safety point of view before we can go to market. The third area on the site is looking at the Staph aureus. So this is important for both the infection control and the eczema. And the two images towards the bottom are of pieces of skin on the right-hand side that's been treated with SkinBioTix technology and one that hasn't on the left here. And the prevalence of Staph aureus is the red. And as you probably can't see that well from here, but the red penetrates all the way down the different layers. So this is the kind of nasty pathogen. It breaks through the skin and passes down the different layers. Well, a piece of skin that's been treated with the SkinBioTix technology, there is no sign of red on there. So not only does it not break down the barrier, but because it stops the adherence of it to the skin, there's none even sitting across the top layer of the skin. And then the graph up on the top here is then looking at the growth of Staph aureus over time. So again, the red line, nice and flat for 5 to 6 hours. And that has then given us some comfort both around the level of dosage that we need for the SkinBioTix technology and how frequently it needs to be applied to the skin. So from the work that we've done to date, it looks like roughly treatment 3 times a day is enough to prevent the Staph aureus adhering to the skin. So these elements or these data are important both for the ability to manage the infection and then also for the potential eczema treatment. So some highlights of the business. We only came to AIM in April last year, so we are quite an early stage company to come to AIM. We successfully raised 4.5 million. Our year end was June, of which we had just under 4 million. Our interim results actually get released tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, so there'll be more of an update on the financials and the position of the business tomorrow morning. As we've discussed, we passed through the toxicity tests. A key thing for us is a lot of the work to date has been in the lab. We now need to demonstrate that we can manufacture at a more commercial scale. So we've had success with a third-party manufacturer that they've been able to scale up at least to a certain level and replicate the results of the technology that we've had in the lab. We're also beginning work on the formulation. So our initial product or application to market will be a cosmetic. And so we're working at the moment on establishing a formulation either in a gel, a cream or a lotion format that we can then test to see that we get the same results once you put the SkinBioTix technology within it, that it serves the same purpose, and that's the key next step on formulation. And as we touched on, kind of clearer now around the dosage and the frequency of the treatment, and we've also fairly recently had our first patent application passed in Australia. So this is our pipeline, the 3 indications, so the cosmetic, the healthcare acquired infections and the eczema treatment. I mean, we're now targeting Q3 2018 for the human study for the cosmetic application, and then looking to commercialise that fairly soon afterwards. Early stage work on both the infection and the eczema treatment, and obviously longer times to bring those both to market. So the cosmetic is it's a relatively easy regulatory pathway to bring something to market. You need to prove that it's safe and it's not toxic. Well, we've worked through those stages. When you then look at the healthcare acquired infections and the eczema, you're then into a much more regulated market. So it's a longer timeline to bring those forward. So ours is a platform technology. As we said, we're applying it to 3 different aspects or markets of the skin at the moment. As a company that's spun out from the university, traditionally quite a lot of investment goes into IP within the universities before it's come out, and we've certainly benefited from that. We've got 3 patent families, I think 18 or 19 patents in application at the moment. We'll continue investing in that IP and the underlying science of the business. And I think what's critical, particularly in the cosmetic market at the moment, is there is a much greater focus from consumers on wanting to understand both what's within the products that they're buying, but also that there is a level of science that drives it. And we've said and are engaging quite early with commercial partners and consumer goods companies, and there is a huge drive from them to want to understand the science behind the business. There are plenty of products incorporating aspects of the microbiome on the market at the moment, but they've tended to go to market before the science, and we're very much driven by the science and then building the market out from there. And we certainly see potential for licensing opportunities during the early stages of development. As I said, our initial focus is on the cosmetic application. Now, our intention is not to bring a product to market ourselves. We're a pretty lean and virtual organisation. We don't want to raise money to take a product to market and speculate on a huge marketing campaign. We'll be looking to license this into either global or national players who will then either combine it with existing products or look to brand new products. And that's certainly the line of the conversations that we're having from a licensing point of view at the moment. Financials say they're a little bit out of date now. I mean, it's all relatively straightforward. We were almost a new company when we came to AIM. We raised the 4.5 million. Obviously a ramp up in our R&D expenditure to June last year. We ended in June with just under 4 million in cash, and primarily that's our asset alongside the IP. And I say there'll be a wider update on those tomorrow when our half-year results to the 31st of December are released. So key for us in 2018 is moving towards the human study. So this is it's a relatively short study. It's over a 30-day period. It'll involve 60 subjects, and we're gearing ourselves up for that. So we're comfortable in terms of the manufacture scale-up that we'll have sufficient material for it. We're working currently on the formulation that we'll use, and we'll then move into the human safety study. Alongside that, we'll continue to look at the regulatory pathway. So that's where the focus at the moment on both the eczema and the infection side is to then be clear on the timeline of what are the milestones and achievements that we need to make sure that we can meet the different regulatory hurdles. We have started early stage commercial discussions. A key focus, because I said this is very much science led when we're talking to third parties, is then seeing, well, what does that data look like when we get through the study in the third quarter. So I think there'll be a lot of interest as we come through that period and see what the data looks like. And obviously we'll continue in investing through the work contract that we had with the university in building out the core technology of the business. And that's introduction to SkinBio. Mike.
Any questions, anybody? Gentlemen, just wait for the microphone just to appear underneath your nose. Thank you.
What microbe or microbes are you using for the lysate?
It is LGG.
Lactobacillus?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the nitrosomonas work in the States in the similar sort of field?
I'm not. Kath may well be, but no, not something I can comment on.
Have you considered any other areas? For instance, in acne treatment, is there a possibility of using this cream?
So there is quite a wide range of areas that we could look at. At the moment, we've decided that we're going to focus in on these areas, and partly the stage we're at now is proving that base tech. So it is a kind of platform technology. So we're at the stage of proving that it will deliver on these aspects, and then consider what some of the wider markets are. And it's a balance of resource and time to move forward on those. But yeah, there definitely are wider opportunities going forward.
Gentleman just down at the front.
Could I ask about your relationship between the companies that you're hoping to give licenses to demonstrate the level of interest and in what you're doing?
So we're talking to a number of companies, so I can't give you names on those, but they're names that you're likely to recognise. I mean, I would say they're very early discussions, so they're aware of. I think one of the appeals again for the company coming out of the university, it's got it's got the largest sort of skin practice in the country of any of the universities. So a lot of these third parties were engaging with Kath and her team at the university to do some research for them. So Kath is well connected around the industry with these organisations. So we've kind of got an open dialogue with them. But I would say, this is quite early stage. And I think a lot of the focus will be around what does the data look like when we have the human study at the back end of the year.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
Would it have the same effect if you rubbed yoghurt all over yourself? Simple enough question.
There are some benefits from that.
Probiotic, but I used to that.
But I think, when you then think about the frequency that you're doing that, and if you wanted to try and sell something, you want it in a kind of form that comfortably goes into the skin. And I think that's the part about not relying on live bacteria, is knowing that the formulation, then for its shelf life, will still generate the kind of same response.
So would it be an over-the-counter product? Obviously, from a moisture point of view, it would be over-the-counter, I presume. If it was, I noticed you've got the regulatory mention in there for eczema and other treatments.
Yes.
Why would you have to have that when probiotic yogurt? You can buy that any supermarket. You'll be able to buy the same product or similar product maybe as a moisturiser. Why would you have to go through a regulatory process for the eczema?
Yeah, so a lot of the base work that was initially done was looking at potential probiotics and seeing what impact they would have. And the university did an awful lot of screening, and the one that we're proceeding on, it actually was by far the most effective, and there were many others that couldn't generate the same results, and also not in a dead extract form. So there was a lot of initial screening that went into then say, okay, what is the technology that could be taken forward?
But would it involve a lot of these companies like angle we could talk about. It's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, NDA, and all sorts of sort of trials and tribulations that go with it, and time to market, dare I say. Will you have to go through that? Is it an active ingredient or non-active ingredient?
So partly the appeal of starting with a cosmetic is the rapid route to market, because that will also demonstrate some of the base technology. On the healthcare acquired infection and the eczema, we're currently looking at, is that a medical device or is it or pharmaceutical? So yes, there will, depending which path those go down, there will be greater requirements for further trials. But again, I think relative to a true pharma drug, the timeline will be much quicker on these.
Okay. More questions from the floor? Nobody? No?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you.